Good morning, Sofa Squad. It's me, Paul, with reporting live from my sofa. I hope y'all are doing great out there. Things are good here at the campground. Before we get started, don't forget we have a brand new Facebook group that we're trying to build up. The link is down in the description. We also have lots of other links down there for the website if you want to see other stuff. If you're listening to the podcast on Apple, don't forget to drop us a review there. It helps us out a whole bunch. Now, listen, y'all, we are talking about Day 3 of the Markeith Loyd trial, but not just Day 3, y'all. Not just Day 3. Y'all, we're analyzing Markeith's testimony. I don't even know where to begin with this, y'all. I don't even know where to begin. Now, some other testimony took place. We're going to go through that real quick, but the chunk of the day is Markeith's testimony, and I mean, it was a train wreck in slow motion. So, without further ado, let's review. Now, the first witness of the day was the medical examiner, and she gets up there, she, as usual, details this is what a medical examiner is, this is how we do our job, so on and so forth. She's up there to talk about the injuries to Sade, and basically, that's her main gig up there. Now, they do end up showing some of these, autopsy photos to the jury, which, that's never a fun thing for anybody to see. So, that goes up there, and another kind of very sad thing that was going on in her testimony is that she does say that, Sade was pregnant, it was a baby boy, about 12 to 13 weeks along. Now, after her, the state rests their case, which was kind of like, what? I mean, honestly, I was happy that it was done at that point, but they went through everything so fast, so I just was like, okay, surprise. But the defense does try to say, okay, well, we want a mistrial, or we want to, get the charges dropped because the state didn't represent their case, and so on and so forth. This is standard protocol that they do. The judge hears them and then denies all the motions, and things continue. Now, next, the defense presents their case. So, first on the stand is Brian Savali, I think is his last name. I hope I'm saying that right. He was the lead investigator on the case, and essentially he's up there talking about, text messages that were on the phone, talks about some screenshots that we'll be hearing from, we'll be hearing those read a little bit later. He goes over details about Markeith's niece, who got caught up in things that he'll testify about, and so things like that. He's kind of just laying some of the evidence for the groundwork for how they got the evidence and whatnot that we'll be hearing about later. Now, the next witness is Detective Shane Overfield, and essentially he's just there to talk about the casing that he found at Walmart. He was the one that found the casing that wasn't with the other casings. That was his reason for being up there, and that was it. Now, the next witness up there was actually somebody a little bit famous, private investigator Patrick McKenna. Now, Patrick was the lead investigator for O.J. Simpson. He also, more recently, was on the Casey Anthony case, and this is who she lived with and worked for a little bit after her acquittal. And he just talks about the pictures and the videos and the interviews and stuff that he did for this case. Now, the next person up there is another private forensic consultant, Anna Cox, and she's up there to just talk about, going to Walmart, looking for evidence of, the gunfire and things of this nature, and she describes how she did that and what she found. After that, they go on lunch, and then when they get back, a forensic computer scientist takes the stand. Now, he's up there to just talk about how they extracted evidence from Sade's phone, for a week's worth of stuff leading up to the incident, and he talks about how they used Cellbrite to do that, so on and so forth. Now, the next witness we're getting closer to Markeith is his cousin. So Glen wasn't really up there that long. He actually had moved in with Markeith, and he was just confirming that, yes, he knew that Markeith didn't like Sade smoking weed. He also talked about the time that Markeith was robbed and how he basically got paranoid after that and started carrying guns and things like that. He's not up there for very long, and then he's off the stand. Now, y'all, before we even get into the next testimony of Markeith, because he was out there the rest of the day, y'all. This needs to come with so many warnings because I still am speechless over it. Here's the thing. When some of these witnesses get up there that want to take the stand, it can go... Sometimes, honestly, it is yeah, we need it. Remember Amber Geiger? We needed to see her on the stand. Now, there were some trifling moments, but this kind of witness here, with the stuff that was coming out of his mouth, it's next level. It's next level. So, I'm just going to say this. His testimony is rambling at times. He's jumping from here to here to here. So just work with me. I've tried to organize it, but I also kind of wanted to keep the timeline that he went in. Now, before he gets up there, the judge does all the stuff of, you know, you don't have to, and we can do this, and you can do that, and that's totally within your rights. Now, apparently they did fit him with like some kind of shock belt or something, because obviously they're not going to have him shackled on the stand. That could bias the jury, although I feel like he did enough biasing on his own. But there's that. So basically, you know, he's up there when they bring the jury in. Now, he is very casual. I mean, the whole time he's just laying back in his chair and kind of rocking back and forth, always looking at the jury, especially when he's talking good about himself, which is 95% of his testimony. So he does kind of give this creepy vibe. So, let's get into it. Now, they start off just establishing the basics, like, you know, where he was living, the jobs that he had. I think he had like 4 jobs. You know, that he's been convicted for 4 different felonies, I think it was. Now, they start off with him talking about this other relationship that he was in with a woman, and she wouldn't quit smoking. And so, essentially, he was like, well, I found another relationship, which was Sade. Now, the first thing they try and do is to tackle some of, like, kind of like his belief systems that he's believed in, you know, for some time, but that also were the catalyst of the arguments between he and Sade that led up to the events. So, like, for example, he doesn't eat meat because he doesn't believe in death or killing God's creations. And you're just like, what? Are you kidding me? How dare you even get up there and say that? You know, and I'm not laughing at the situation, but the level of absurdity, if you follow me, you know at this point that I find humor in the absurdity of things. His testimony is so absurd at times that you can only just be like, what am I watching? So, but you know, yeah, he doesn't believe in killings, God of creation, so that's why he doesn't like to eat meat. And there's other reasons too that we'll get to in a little bit. But he's had this belief system for like 10 years or so. He also doesn't believe in religion. He thinks it divides people. My thought process after I watched it, I was like, he doesn't believe in religion because he thinks that he's God. Now, they go into how they actually met. He and Sade met. So they met on Facebook, and she sent him a friend request, and he talks about the back and forth, and they entered into a private chat, and essentially he's like, well, no, you're all cute and everything like that, but, you know, what else do you have to bring to the relationship? What's your credit score? And you're just like, what? What am I watching? What am I watching? I can't look. You know, I'm just speechless. I'm just speechless, y'all. So he goes into saying that, you know, he wants more than just sex. He makes sure to let us all know he can get any woman he wants. So many women just throwing themselves at him. You know, he's a bouncer at a strip club. You know, women are not an issue for him. And he wants a relationship with kids. He didn't feel like he ever got to be a father because he was in prison for like 13 years. Now, he goes off on a side tangent that basically is saying how he took a charge to keep a friend from going to prison, or a family member or something, or a girlfriend or whatever. And, you know, so he did 13 years for this person. Everything is framed to make him look like a saint. And it gets very morbid because you just realize that this guy just thinks the world of himself. But, you know, his intentions, you know, I wanted a family. I wanted to start, you know, this life over, you know, with Sade. He did not think that this is his baby. He felt like she was pregnant before she got with him. But he was still like, it doesn't matter. I was going to raise this baby. So it all sounds good on paper. But now the other thing where, you know, he's given these excuses for why he would ask about her credit score. And this is completely normal to him. And I'm just like, does Tinder have that? Like, you know, does Plenty of Fish have that as one of the questions? Like, what's your credit score? Because, like, y'all, let's be honest. In this day and age, at a certain point in life, there are things that I'm just like, now credit score is important. If somebody's going to pop off with like, I've got a 1 or 2, there's clearly some issues that we need to address before we get too serious. But if I'm just starting to talk to somebody, I mean, I'm not going to have them fill out a credit application. Are you kidding me? Like, so what is it, like rent to own? I'm just like, what are you talking about? Why would you even ask that? And then like justify your reasons for asking it. Now, he goes into his struggles that he, you know, had getting out of prison. He talks about, you know, trying to stay on the right path. The jobs that he had to live with his sister, sometimes out of his car. So he paints this picture like he was really trying to do the right thing. So I remember his testimony is jumping all over the place. So they round him back to when he actually first met Sade in person. And he's basically like, you know, I went to go pick her up and she was wearing booty shorts. And he didn't agree with that, but, you know, because he doesn't think a queen should expose herself to the world. Now, they go off on a side tangent of what his definition of a queen is, which I never really got, which basically he's like, my sisters, my people. So I guess it's just like a way, I think also because he views himself as a king. And so there was that. But he didn't say anything because he was like, basically studying her to be like, I was just going to like, you know, let her be her and just see what her natural habitat was, essentially. Which is, I mean, a lot of people do this on a date, you know what I'm saying? Now, then he starts going into this narrative of like, he talks about a time where, you know, he smoked weed with Sade. Now, according to him, you know, he didn't smoke, he didn't like doing stuff like that. Well, he had a bad reaction to it. And essentially, he had this revelation that it was a sign from God. And essentially, he's like, you know, if I'm having this reaction, then what is a fetus going to do? And this is the belief system that he started placing on her, which was, I don't want you smoking weed while you're pregnant with, you know, our baby, even though he didn't think it was his baby. But, you know, he's basically trying to paint it out like she's harming the kid at this point. And I mean, you know, that is what it is. You know, but the whole thing that's jarring about him is how he comes up with these things to say, well, no, you can't do this. There is no level of, we had a conversation about it, and we came to this agreement. It's, I believe this, and the reason he wraps his mind around to most of these beliefs, you're just like, what? Where are you coming from? I mean, they're like delusional type things. So, and then he's kind of forcing her to do these things. So now these signs from God that he's talking about, his attorney is going to pause on those and really exaggerate those moments and dig into them, because that's definitely a thing that when you see these cases, a lot of people will claim like insanity and stuff like that, like, you know, they're talking to God and things of this nature. Now then he talks about their first intimate time together, and then essentially, you know, he was going to use a condom, but Sade was like, I don't want to use one, and he was like, well, if you don't want to use one, that means you want a real commitment, because I don't do unsafe sex with somebody that's basically not my wife, so you must really want to be my wife. And then she was like, well, yeah, don't use it. So, you know, it's kind of like, here's the thing, the logic, it's almost like listening to a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, however old kids are hooking up with people these days. God knows it's probably way younger than that. But, like, almost like their logic, but this is coming out of, like, you know, probably almost a 50-year-old at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, mid-40 something, you know. Because I think he was, like, 40, or maybe he was right at 40, and she was in her 20s when they started dating. So, you know, he's in his 40s. And so the logic that he's coming out with, I'm just like, this doesn't... I mean, I don't even know if a kid would come up with this logic. Now, he does talk about the awkwardness between her family. I mean, yeah, he knows that her mother did not like him. And, you know, she was always disrespectful. But, you know, he went over to their house and stuff a couple of times. And, you know, he was like, the father was always respectful, and that's his castle, that's his kingdom. And so he was, you know, fine with putting up with the disrespect from the mother because of that. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Okay, so now remember, a lot of his stories in this are all framed to make him look good. So he talks about essentially how he was helping her, Sade, go to real estate school by paying for it. And now his schedule with work, because he worked overnight basically, and he would sleep during the day. And so like the first day she went to school, she was all like, well, where have you been? And da-da-da-da-da. So the second day, he slept in his car outside so she wouldn't worry about where he was at. So again, it all sounds good on paper. You know, it all sounds real easy going, but it just doesn't add up. You know, and the lawyer did say, well, did she have a reason to worry about you at this point? Because remember, he was cheating on her at a certain point. And he's like, well, not at that point. You know, and I'm just like, really? You know, okay, sure. Oh, okay, we believe you. What a little saint you were. Now, at times, he talks about how excited he was over this baby. They play a Facebook Live feed that they did where they were at this, you know, getting the sonogram done. And it's always sad to hear, you know, Sade's there talking. You can hear the nurse and the whole 9 yards. So it's sad to hear. I'm sure it was a tearjerker for the family members in the crowd. Now, next, at some point, they end up on this conversation. And remember, we were going to wrap ourselves back around to eating meat. And, yeah, I don't even know about this one. But he goes into this logic about how meat turns his feces brown. And when he doesn't eat meat, his feces is green. And then he goes into how this is another sign from God, but it's also like a sign from Mother Nature. And he goes into how he came to this conclusion. And y'all, it's so contorted. It's just, you know, whatever. But basically that when Mother Nature is alive and things are going well, everything's green. But then, like, you know, say during fall or winter, when it's dead, things are brown. And so he equates that to his poopies. And that's another reason why he determined that she shouldn't be eating meat. And you're just like, what am I listening to? What am I listening to? He's going to be writing his name in his jail cell with his boobies. Like, you already know this. You already know this has happened at this point. You know, I'm just like, this guy, is he, you know, what kind of unit is he in? If it is not a mental health unit, I don't know what else I can say for him. There's just, his logic is so bizarre. And I don't know if he's trying to make himself sound insane to try and get off of the charges, or if this is really just how he thinks. But I think it's just really how he thinks. Now, at one point he goes into, because they're trying to, remember, their whole point in him being up there is walking him through the story of how they arrived at this event. And I mean, y'all, he goes on so many tangents, you're just like, you can't keep up with it. So then we arrive at a situation where he's describing where he came home early one time, and the story was, you know, I had to leave work because my boss wanted to borrow money, so I went home, and then I found her studying, and she was eating a ham sandwich, and I was like, I thought we said, well, you were going to eat meat. And so then he left, and he sent her this huge text message about, look, you can just go do you if you want to sneak around and do stuff and yada yada yada. And I'm like, you want to start a family with this person, you've made this decision, you've known her for what, a couple of months, but now you're willing to throw that away over a ham sandwich. I'm just like, are you kidding me? I mean, the logic makes no sense, because most likely, y'all, he's lying about half this stuff. I mean, let's be honest. I'm sure there is some truth somewhere in the middle to this, you know, because at the end of the day, they both seem to enter into this whole thing of, we're going to be this couple, you know, an add water couple family type thing before really knowing each other. And so I'm sure that's gonna, anytime that happens, I mean, I've been there, I've done that before when I was younger, friction happens very soon after, because you just don't know who you're getting involved with. And I think she probably very quickly saw that this guy is nuts, you know, and probably a very violent person. Now then they get into this conversation about how he was robbed at work, you know, and again, a 20-minute conversation about how essentially he was robbed at work 2 different times. And this prompted him to start carrying guns with him, because basically he was afraid from the chain of events that took place that the robbers were going to think he was coming to kill them, so they were going to try and kill him first. So he started packing when he went to work. Now, somehow we also arrived later at a contorted story about his ex-girlfriend, and it basically involves, like, you know, he had slept with his ex, so then she was upset, and she was like, well, I'm going to go sleep with my ex now to spite you. And he was like, okay, well, get in the car, I'll go drop you off. And he takes her over there and drops her off, you know, at her ex's house to spend the night with him and have sex with him, I guess. Now, this ex that he's talking about is, you know, he's going to get back with her. I mean, he sounds like he toys with women, and he has tons of women circulating at one time. And he's like playing, you know, messing around with each of them, whatever. And so I'm sure Sade realized this very quickly, because remember also that she had access to his Facebook, which is never a good thing. If you have something, because he was like, I don't have anything to hide. When I'm in a relationship, you can have my phone, you can have this. But then he clearly has stuff to hide, because he forgets that he gave her the password. And I'm like, how do you forget that? You shared a Facebook account. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, why even do that in the first place? You know, unless you do it like as a family or whatever. But it's just drama. So now they finally start getting him to like the day of the event, and they're talking about the text messages, and they go over like, you know, that Sade, you know, he's saying that Sade was texting him in a jealous rage, and he's going into how basically at this point, you know, he had broken up with her. He had decided, I'm going to give her 6 months, because essentially he was like, women will, you know, be spiteful and have an abortion, and her family already wanted her to have one, and she knows how much he wants his child, so he was going to kind of, you know, drag things out to where she couldn't abort the baby, because he was very confident he would get custody of the child if need be. Now, he is also planning with his ex to, if Sade doesn't get her act together, he's going to get back with the ex, and they're going to raise the baby. And, you know, I'm listening to this and like, did the ex really go along with that? You know, is that really what happened? You know, because it's just, it's so insane what he's talking about. Now, also in this, he makes no qualms throughout talking about how he will put on blast anyone who he's dating, their personal business on Facebook. And he's basically like, if you don't want your stuff on Facebook, then don't mess with me when we're dating. Remember, this is a 40-year-old man here, y'all. And I'm just listening to this, and I'm like, what? What happened is he got out of prison and Facebook had been invented, and I mean, it hooked him. And now the next things that happen is the defense attorney is reading text messages out loud, and then having also Markeith read them out loud. So when the defense guy is reading them, you're just like, I mean, it's just amusing to listen to him reading these text messages, you know, because it just doesn't sound right. It's very entertaining. Now, a lot of these text messages are between him and her, and remember, this is like leading up to this event, is about her lying and being a liar, and she's kind of saying the same thing to him, but also, like, you know, talking about him laying his hands on her. Now, he does end up admitting that they had an altercation where he grabbed her by her neck and threw her down. And basically he was like, you know, it was all over lying, and he felt really bad about it. And, you know, especially because she's pregnant and all this stuff. And he was like, so in order to make up for that, he felt like the need to repent. So he cut his hair off, his dreads. I guess, like, I don't know if all the way off or just shorter to where we see him. I don't know. Because he loved those. And so that was like giving up something he loved. And you're just like, you know, oh, okay, that makes sense on the logic train. Let's watch it crash and burn. Now, all this text and all this stuff leads up to the events that we see happen on that day, where, you know, she sends him a text, well, you can forget about the baby or whatever, and he takes this as she's going to abort this baby, yada, 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 and so he needs to drive over there. So now, the night of the incident, he does go over there, and we go through the same thing where he knocks on the door, she comes out, they talk, he's trying to explain himself about, you know, talking to other women. He does admit that he had just had sex with his ex, because basically she had gone on his Facebook, sent him screenshots of proof of this stuff, and again, it's like, this is why you don't give your Facebook password out if you're doing shady stuff. And then you forget that you did it, but I think he didn't care, and it was a passive-aggressive way for him to play games. Because essentially he's like, you know, when I break up with someone, I give them 2 days to see if they're going to kind of chase after the relationship to see if the love was real. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, so this is something you put people through to test. I mean, y'all, this guy is so narcissistic, it's not even funny. Now, after he tells her that he had sex with the ex, she's like, hold on, I'll be right back. And he claims that this is when she goes, and we know from the other evidence that this is apparently when she goes and gets the gun, you know, and things go to that level. And she comes out and is essentially asking him to come around the back of the house. And he goes back there. Now, at this point, the defense has him come and stand, and it's like you can't hear him talk that well. So you're just like, no, this is like the best part. Now, he says that he has 2 guns. And so essentially he's going through this whole reenactment of what takes place, her pulling a gun. I think I heard this correctly, and y'all drop it in the comments, that he is saying that she fired a shot and hit the garage door. Remember the bang that Ronald said he heard? That was that. Now, he reenacts this on a diagram. He reenacts this with the defense attorney. And y'all, when Markeith does things like, I pull my guns out, I mean, it makes you jump a little bit. And even when he gets in the interaction with the defense attorney, where he has to, like, well, the defense is like, well, no, put your hands on me, show what happened. You're just like, oh my God, they're going to sound off on that shock belt. We're about to see this guy drop to the ground, because there's something very disarming about him. I mean, he's scary. Now, what Markeith is also saying is that during this time, yeah, the brother comes out, they're explaining what happened. Now, Sade is still pissed. She's upset, and this is when she's like, my brother's going to whip your ass. And it's this whole motion he's explaining. He has 1 gun here, because remember, he has her gun and then 2 guns. And he's turning around this way, and I guess he's trying to say that the brother, Ronald, took that as he was reaching for a gun to start firing. And so Ronald attacks him. And at this point, he's like, I was afraid for my life. I was afraid for my life. Now, here's my thing, y'all. You saw his brother, her brother. I mean, he's not a huge guy. So I'm just sitting here, I'm like, I just don't believe that whatsoever. You know, I just don't believe it. You had 3 guns on you. You're a personal trainer, a bouncer, all this stuff. And love her brother to death, Mr. Ronald, no offense, but he's just a bigger guy. You know what I mean? Bigger than me. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. So I'm sitting here like, and you were scared that he was going to overpower you and like get a gun or whatever. So, okay. So at this point, he just starts shooting. I mean, that's just, he's not paying attention. He's just shooting. you know, popping off rounds, doing all this stuff. Now, he does say, like, when I was getting in my car, I heard the door open, and I just turned around and I started firing shots off there, too. Not to kill anybody, so don't think that. He was just doing it to let people know to, like, get down. He wasn't trying to shoot anybody else, though, so there's that. Now, after the event with that text message that he sent that was saying something like, I hope you don't make it, that was also a typo, so don't get confused, y'all. He meant to say, I hope you do make it. So there's that, so he apologized for that. Now, after the event, you know, he's on the run, and he goes into all these different stories about how, you know, family members, nieces, ex-girlfriends, all these people got involved because essentially he's afraid that the cops are trying to kill him. Well, obviously he knows they're trying to come and get him, you know, and so there's that going on. They don't spend too much time on the Walmart situation, but essentially, like, after the Walmart situation, you know, he's still on the run, obviously. He knows, like, oh my gosh. So he's trying to essentially work this deal out to where he can turn himself in, and Sade's father gets the money, the reward money, for capturing him or whatever, for the kids. And so there's, you know, wiretap phone calls here. You know, they've also, the police have, you know, arrested, you know, his nieces and people like this. All this stuff goes down, and it's very contorted, y'all, how he goes into all this information, and so we're just going to round that out with that. So then, you know, they get to the part of, obviously, he's petrified, he's going to get killed. Well, if you saw what the cops did to him. And, I mean, if you haven't seen it, because people have been asking me, like, what happened to his eye, and, you know, stuff like that, and I posted some articles on the website, but, you know, the police gave him a proper beat down is what happened, and I'm talking, he looks horrific. I'm shocked, actually, at how much they beat him down. So he lost his eye from that. So, and I don't want to post pictures and stuff because it's bad, y'all. So just Google it. You'll see it'll come up. So there's all that. Let's end that at this because this is getting long. But the state begins to cross him. And very soon into it, they have to, a juror slips a note saying basically they're dizzy, they don't feel good, so they're going to have to end the proceedings. Well, also during this, another juror has come and basically been like, I heard some stuff that has made me be biased. So, y'all, this is like 45-minute little mini trial that takes place. I have never seen a jury so turned up, y'all. I have never seen something so turned up. We've got people snitching on each other. I mean, it's all happening in this jury. This jury is like the worst. I'm sorry, but I'm just like, what are y'all doing? And so, you know, it is what it is. And I'm sorry to say that, but I'm just like, y'all, come on. But I mean, they're doing the proper thing. But essentially what happened is a woman overheard another juror asking one of the deputies at the hotel some stuff that all she heard was, well, no, if you go get a gun and then come back, you're still guilty. And so basically this juror is like, you know, I can't get that out of my head. I still have that information. And I believe she was an alternate. So then the judge is like, sends her out, brings the other juror in question. And that juror is like, well, I was asking questions about the stand your law, you know, thing, because she was getting ready to get her conceal and carry or whatever, you know, and I'm just like, here we go, this damn stand your ground law, my God almighty, let's figure out how we can kill people legally, you know. I mean, I'm just sitting here like, what? So the judge is like, you know, you can't talk about guns in this case to the deputy, you know, you can talk about it in a roundabout way, but you can't do that. So essentially what they end up doing is the juror that was like, I've already heard this, because she didn't know the whole conversation, they strike her. So she was an alternate, is what it is. And I'm just like, y'all, jury, please just, you know, come on, y'all. Keep it together. I get you're sequestered, but keep it together, y'all. Don't be talking about the trial. Don't do it, please. We do not need to suffer through this, and the family doesn't need to suffer through this monster again. So that was that, y'all. That was all of it. Again, he's going to still be on the stand probably all day today, y'all, because he loves talking about how wonderful he is. So that's that. Let's end this with, don't forget, we've got a Facebook group going. I'd love to do a watch party for this verdict if we can, but we're going to be doing stuff like that there, so don't forget to join. The description's down there, the link's down in the description. And that's it. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hopefully this cold's going to be gone soon and I can like talk normal again. And don't forget, if you're listening to the Apple podcast, to us on Apple, to drop us a review down there if you don't mind. Let us know what we can do that you want to hear. So that's it. I hope you'll have a great day. Thank you, Sofa Squad, for being the Sofa Squad. And I'll talk to you soon.